Today I want to discuss why Iran, as a Muslim country, is attacking its its neighboring countries, like Gulf states. Right now we have a semi-war with United States and Israel attacked Iran, and they wanted to, but they attacked it only with missiles and bombardment, and they want to change the regime in Iran. They want to change it mostly because it's very hostile toward Israel, but also toward Sunni states. Iran is a Shia majority state, one of the very few in Muslim world. And also, maybe the most important fact is that it is a country which want to get nuclear weapons, which is forbidden by many international laws and acts. And for us as a humanity, this is maybe the most important factor that countries cannot just want to get nuclear weapons because their military capacity will be better, because nuclear weapon is too dangerous for all humans, and only few countries ever got those weapons. And it is forbidden for new countries to get a nuclear weapon. And also, the important fact is that Iranians, in a way, despise their government, only in a way, of course. But for example, I have read that recent protests in Iran and costed about 30,000 lives of Iranians. So right now we have like 2,000 dead or 3,000 dead Iranians. Maybe not, even not this number, and its own country, killed and murdered about 30,000 its own citizens. So it's understandable in some way that this country needs to be stopped, even from the international perspective. But of course, Muslim countries are very hostile toward Jews, toward Israel, and they have their own agenda to spread Islam by sword or by murdering people and saying that they murder no one, that you are just lying or you are just fabricating something. And the proof is that Muslims, like Indians in 19th century or even earlier in a time of conquista, in exception that Muslims destroyed all other cultures and religions in spreading their own religion from Arabian Peninsula. And also Iran empire was destroyed, and but Iranians as people, as ethnic group, survived, but they chose Islam, at the beginning Sunni Islam, and then later Shia Islam. But maybe the most important factor in our today's discussion, our today's lecture, is why Iran is attacking its own neighbors, specifically Gulf states, but also it attacked Turkey in some ballistic missiles, I think Azerbaijan, and so on. So all Muslims know, but they don't talk about it openly, that there is a grudge between two major sects, or let's call them sects, but sect is also a derogatory term. So there are two branches of Islam, two major branches: Sunni Islam and Shia Islam. And many, especially young Muslims, and Sunnis and Shias hate each other to the point of entering another sect temple, so a mosque, because Sunni mosques and Shia mosques are called the same mosques, and blowing others with themselves, so murdering them. So Sunnis and Shias hate each other, and we saw this in Iraq when United States invaded this country. They deposed Saddam Hussein as a dictator, but Iraqis can couldn't and still can't build a proper society because this hatred toward each other is too big to be just ignored. So all this brutality in Iraq was because of religious hatred, and it is a religious hatred of very high capacity. I saw documentaries in Iraq, for example, showing because in Iraq Shias are the majority, 60%, Sunnis are about 40%, but Saddam Hussein was a Sunni, and Sunnis ruled in Iraq. But after United States invaded the country, the Iraqis could choose their government, and of course majority of Shias voted for Shia parties, Sunnis voted or not voted at the beginning at all, but then later voted on Sunnis. So we see that Shias won because they were the majority, and it began a civil war in 2006 and then later in 2016, and the gruesome scenes of this war they were really horrible. So I remember watching one of the movies and they were showing the bodies of Iraqis. I'm not sure, probably they were Sunnis murdered by Shias, but I'm not sure. And they have like in their heads holes after someone used on them some kind of tools to make these holes, maybe even in still living bodies. Or we had a scene when they found on the street, American soldiers found on a street guy. He was probably a Sunni because it was in a time when Shias created their own death squads and targeted those who blow themselves earlier, because first aggressors were of course Sunnis, because Sunnis knew that they will lose the election and that Shias will be ruled in Iraq. So they started blowing up the Shia shrines and so on, and after one of those shrines, Shias started to creating death squads, and there was a man whose body was, and especially face, was mutilated. Eyes even were carved out, maybe. He was really injured in a serious, vicious way. So these horrible attritions between each other, they were really terrifying, and Sunnis and Shias civilians were terrified, and even American soldiers were terrified. But generally, Muslims are behaving like a very big mob. And a very big mob family, so they are not talking about those things very openly, because they know that it shows them in a very negative way. But right now we have this brewing conflict between Sunnis and Shias, and this conflict is from the beginning of Islam, because for example in Christianity we had even in ancient times conflicts between different branches of Christianity, but in reality only in 1025, 1081, in that year the first major split in Christianity began between Western Christianity and Eastern Christianity, and earlier splits between, for example, Nestorians, and after that between and the Great Church, and then between Monophysites and Great Church, they were very small. And they were still 300 or 400 years, like 400 years after the founding of Christianity. But in Islam, this conflict between Sunnis and Shias is just after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. So Prophet Muhammad is founding Islam, but chose he didn't choose successor. He didn't choose successor. So Muslims were deliberating who should be a successor, and the Sunnis decided that it should be the most charismatic person, and Sunnis, and this is the majority, like let's say 85 to 90% of Muslims are Sunnis, but the minority, like 10 to 12%, something like that, decided that it should be someone from the family of the Prophet. So not the most charismatic one, but someone who is in straight line from the Prophet family. And this conflict is still brewing, it is still on, it is very brutal. So we see that Iran know that even though, let's say, majority Arab country channels, even on YouTube, like Ali Dawa, Mohammed Hijab, they are all ignoring this war, or they are talking very little about it. Smile to Jana is talking about it a little more, but still they don't talk about it very openly, because all of them are Sunnis Muslims, and they know that there is a conflict, and Iran knows it, so that's why he's attacking Gulf states and other Sunni Muslim states, because Sunnis know that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Why? Because Pakistan is the only Muslim country which have a nuclear weapon, but it is mostly to counter India. It is not to let's say counter Iran, but Pakistan is a very conservative Sunni Muslim country with many suicide bombers. One of the major players who committed 9/11 is in prison in United States. He is Pakistani origin. So Pakistanis are very radical Muslims, maybe sometimes even more radical than Arabs. We saw this in Bondi Beach massacre of Jews, when the shooter was of Pakistani origin, or he was an Indian of Muslim religion, or he was even a Pakistani Muslim. So Pakistanis are very against Shias, and they even blow up some Shia mosques in Pakistan. So all Muslim countries know that if Iran will be able to create a nuclear weapon, it will not be against Israel, because Israel is too far and it is too small country to fight with Israel, but it is to show that Shias can and have and want to rule Muslim world. And Sunnis know that even though Shias are only 10% of Muslims, they are almost as brutal as Sunnis. They don't use suicide bombers, but they don't use them mostly, I think, because there are too few of them. So they cannot just sacrifice some lives to just blow up something or someone. And they use more advanced, nuanced tactics, but they are still very opposed against the Jews, even though Iran is the only Muslim country right now when we have a quite large population of Jews, like 10 to 15,000. So, because in most Muslim countries there is no a single Jew, and it is because of this conflict, of course, because of the creation of Israel state. But in Iran, the situation is a little bit different. There are still many Iranian Jews migrated to Israel, but there is like a small group of 10 to 15,000 Jews living in Iran. but Iran also want to dominate Shia world because he has a proxy terrorist group like in Yemen Houthis, which are Shias, and they are committing many acts of violence with fighting Sunnis in Yemen. They have Hezbollah, which is a Shia terrorist group. So they have many Shias serving them. That's why Israel is attacking Lebanon and Hezbollah there. But Sunnis are aware of all of this. They don't talk about it openly, but they know all about it. And they know that Iran cannot be as powerful as to have a nuclear weapon. Especially because let's say in Muslim world, I would say the level of aggression against Sunnis and Shias is very potent, very high, and Iran is a neighbor of Pakistan. So, and in Pakistan, they are very radical. Most of Pakistanis are, I would say, maybe the most brutal, vicious, and savage Muslims in our modern world. And there could be a conflict between Pakistan and Iran on this level of sectarian differences. So and Pakistan knows that its nuclear weapons are against incursion and attack of India, not against other countries, especially Muslim countries. But in case of Iran getting a nuclear weapon, it's for Pakistan not so good situation. So Iran is trying to show Sunni countries that he wants to dominate this world, especially the Muslim world. But and Sunni countries know that. So they will not openly, let's say, agreed on this aggression of Israel and United States against Iran, but they know that it is in their best interest to do so, even silently, because for them, many Sunni Muslims think that Shias are heretics, and some of them want to openly kill them and murder them and commit different acts of violence against Shias. So so for the Muslim world, if Iran would be able to get nuclear weapon, it will destroy Islam even more from within. From within, because let's talk about a little bit about Muslims in general. They are rather simple, vicious, sometimes horrifying and savage people. I discussed here in Poland with Muslims. I was a landlord to a Turkish family, so I know that they are really rather blunt and rather not very smart people, let's say it that way. So they have the problem with their own culture, their own civilization, their own way of behavior, and we see that in Middle East, war is maybe not as brutal as in African countries, but it is almost always on. There is always some kind of conflict, and most of the victims of these conflicts are Muslims. Because, for example, let's see this from the perspective of Hamas. Yes, Hamas thinks that Israel shouldn't exist, that it should be destroyed, and that this land is a native land of Palestinians, which is a lie, because Jews are the native owners of this land, and they just reconquer it as Spanish people reconquer Spain from Muslim rule. But from perspective of Arabs, this is their own land, but they attacked Israel. They murdered many civilians in vicious, brutal way, recording it, but they murdered 1,200 civilians. And how many Muslims died in this conflict? About 55,000, maybe 60,000 Palestinians because Israel attacked Gaza because the Hamas operatives kidnapped many of Israelis as hostages. So we see that if I was a commander or in a higher echelons of Muslim elites, I would think twice or thrice between doing something extreme because okay, we murdered many Jews, we are proud of it, we are fighting for our country, but they killed and sometimes even murdered many more of us, 50 to maybe even 60,000 against 1,000 of them, 1,200. So so we see that all these wars in Muslim world cost Muslims their own lives, their own mental health, physical health, even spiritual health, and so on. So we see that this conflict of two hostile sects in Islam is destroying Ummah. Muslim Ummah is like Christendom in Christianity. It's a name for all Muslims in the world in all countries, but specifically in Muslim countries, like one body, one ruled by a caliph. Right now, there is no real ummah because there are different countries with different agendas, with different ideas, different Muslim countries with different ideas, agendas, and so on. But we see that this ummah, Muslim ummah, especially in Middle East, is destroying itself, especially from within. Especially from within, because most vicious war, most casualty-like war are between Muslims themselves. We saw this situation in Iraq, we saw this situation in Lebanon, we saw this situation in Iran, we saw this situation in Syria. So most of these wars and most casualties are because of grudges between Sunnis and Shias. And Iran still, even though he knows that he is not able to dominate Muslim world because Shias are like 10 to 12% of all Muslims, but Iran knows that Arab countries don't want Iran to have and to get nuclear weapon. They would, of course, saying that yeah, another Muslim country has a Muslim has a nuclear weapon, and it's good for the Ummah because we are stronger and so on, especially against the disbelievers, Zionists, which are they calling Jews and the Crusaders. But in their own way of thinking, they know that Iran will be spreading or by violence or by different means its ideology, its Shia ideology, to all Muslim world. So, for example, we see that sometimes that Iran is very hostile toward Israel, but Sunni countries know that it's only a marketing way of showing that we are true Muslims. We are even more true than Sunni Muslims because we are openly fighting with Israel. And Sunnis know that this is just a game. It's not a reality. They just want to convince Muslims to convert to Shia branch of Islam. So Sunnis know that, and they openly hate and use violence against Shias because except I think Bahrain, Iraq, and Iran, most Muslim countries are Sunni majorities, and Shias are living in those countries. They are like 10% of population, but they are often persecuted in one way or another. Sunnis don't talk about it, but we know that this is the case, and the Shias know that that they need to be very careful not to instigate or aggravate Sunnis, because we saw how this situation happened in and ended in Iraq and in Syria, and to some extent in Lebanon. So this conflict for Muslims is, of course, at the beginning it's because of the, let's say, United States, and Israel hates us, hates Muslim world, so they want to kill us. But they know that the reality is much more complicated, and it is more on a line of Sunni Shia dominance in Muslim world. Let me know in the comments what do you think about these grudges and this conflict, Iran versus rest of the Arab countries.